It's time to talk about everyone's favorite subject when it comes to the Orlando Magic, that dreaded offense. We've got an offensive efficiency expert, a shooting coach on the podcast today. Let's dive right in.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is February 4th, 2022. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the expert and site editor over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can of course follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to talk all about the Orlando Magic's offense, what they're doing well, what they can do better, where players can improve their individual shooting. We'll be talking with offensive efficiency expert and shooting coach Roger Galo. He'll explain a lot more about his credentials coming up here in just a moment. But before we bring him in, we truly want to thank you for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, right when we upload, no matter when, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Remember, you can download us wherever you download podcasts, as well as stream us on YouTube. Without any further delay, let's bring in Roger Galo. Roger, thanks for coming on the show. We truly appreciate you coming on here and talking a little bit about the Orlando Magic's offense, which has been an issue for them since essentially Dwight Howard left.
Well, thank you for having me on, Phil. I'm looking forward to this.
Absolutely. Obviously, we're sitting here looking at the stats, and I apologize if his video looks frozen. Hopefully that'll come back up for those watching on YouTube. You should still be able to hear him on the podcast. We're still going audio here. But obviously the Magic are sitting near the bottom of essentially every offensive category. This is a team that I think a lot of us came into the season understanding would be offensively challenged. They don't have kind of the superstar players, so to speak. They've got a rookie head coach at that. What are you seeing from the Magic's offense as kind of a jumping off point for how to break down what this team is trying to do?
Well, I see that they're struggling from the three ball in particular, but they're also struggling from that two ball area. Now, if you're struggling from those two areas, and I think unfortunately they're at the very bottom of the league in those two categories. And when you're that challenged in those two categories, winning games is going to become a very difficult issue. The interesting thing, by virtue of this unintended decade-long journey that I've took, that has been exposed to me, is the frenetic style that I'm noticing, particularly younger ball teams seem to get caught up in. And some of it is predicated on the pure athleticism of some of these athletes that they've got on this team. Some of these guys like Suggs, can they take it to the hoop? Yeah, it looks like they can take it to the hoop. Can they finish at the hoop? Well, not necessarily as efficiently as most coaches or fans would probably like, but they're capable of going to the hoop. Some of the mechanics of shot making from outside can be impacted by that negatively. I call it a freneticness. It's just that they're so gifted athletically and they've bought into that part of their game that oftentimes I've noticed that it's unmanaged at the most critical release point, for example, on a jump shot. And that jump shot could be a mid-range, a short range, or even a long-range jump shot. Because all of a sudden, everything that led up to that moment, Phil, has to be really quiet and under control. And that's like a change of speed suddenly. And it's not something that conventional, traditional developmental coaches are really almost aware of, unfortunately. They don't see it as that kind of a detriment, and that can make the challenge even that much greater.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point you bring up, because I think the NBA over the last decade, maybe decade and a half, has become a much more development operation. You go back and look kind of the heyday of the NBA, the 80s and the 90s. You're getting kids, you're getting draft picks. They're not kids at that point, but you're getting draft picks that are 3-4 years into their college careers. And so they've done, kind of a lot of this understanding of how to manage a game, and a lot of this development outside of the NBA before they even come to the NBA. Now, you got, as you were talking about, kind of guys struggling with the pace of the game. I keep thinking about RJ Hampton. Hampton's obviously out right now with the knee injury, but what we always say about RJ Hampton, incredibly gifted, talented player, is one of the top high school kids in his class. He opted to go play overseas in Australia for New Zealand. The Australian league is not a nothing league. That is a very good basketball league.
Right.
And he comes back to the U.S. and like the first thing that we noticed when the Magic got him last March and have noticed throughout the course of this season is that he sometimes struggles to control his speed. Like the biggest thing for him is he goes too fast. He's always going 100 miles an hour and he gets to the basket and, kind of overcooks a layup. Or, just the big thing that we've always said about him is once the game slows down for him, once he's able to learn how to control his speed, he's going to be a really good player. But learning how to do that at the NBA level can be a much more difficult prospect than maybe having to go through even getting a second year at the college level to kind of understand how to manage your talents and play at your pace. That's I agree that I think that's such a big thing for young players to learn. And I think we see that a lot with a lot of the Magic's young players too, especially with kind of the stereotype that young teams try to play fast. They try to get fast breaks. They try to, play a million miles an hour. And yes, you want to get fast break opportunities when you can. Those are easy points. But if you're not playing under control, you run into trouble.
That's very, very needed. I happen to agree with everything you just said. And I like the way you framed it beautifully. It encompasses a lot. And what's difficult for some of these players to do is realize that there's a difference between, there's a part of the verticality of a shot that cannot be ignored while you're moving laterally. And that's connected to that footwork that you're talking about. And believe it or not, that take it to the rim mentality, which coincidentally, back in my day, the mantra. It was the single most let's get a high percentage shot. What did that mean? That meant let's take it to the rim, get that layup. Well,
or get to the foul line.
This is going to come to us as a shock to audience of yours out there. For a guard, taking it from out there, 25 feet, 28 feet to the rim, knowing there are some 7-footers down there, some big bodies that might have 70 or 80 pounds on you, taking it to the rim and trying to finish might not be as high a percentage shot as we once referred to it as. Now compare that to 30 feet out, and there's only one defensive player. There's not another set of feet, another set of hands within 20 feet of you to the right of you, 20 feet of you to the left of you, 20 feet south of you, and you've got one player only standing between you and the jump shot that far out. That's a pretty easy, almost effortless kind of shot. It can be. But when you have this freneticness that you've grown up on as a young player, and you're so freakishly gifted athletically, it's hard to understand that pace has to be under my control for the benefit of not only me as an individual player, but for the entire team's benefit.
Yeah, and Orlando Magic coach Jamal Mosley has talked all year, kind of the three tenets of his offense that he's trying to build in this young team. And look, everyone with the Magic understands that this is a growing process. That this season is about making mistakes, developing, learning from them. It wins and losses isn't how we're judging this season as much of a zero-sum game as a basketball game is. The three tenets that he talked about throughout the offseason is kind of built up for the season. is he wants his team to play with pace. So he does want them to play quickly and to move quickly, because that's, if you're standing still, an NBA defense is going to close in on you pretty quickly. He wants them to play with the pass, so he wants them to move the ball to create offense, and he wants them to play for each other. So again, a lot of those kind of simple, very easy basketball concepts. But you talk about a team playing with pace. As bad as the Magic have been throughout the course of the season, the last 6 games, which they are 4-2, small sample size, I know, they have been a lot better. I believe they're 11th in offensive rating in that time. They're second in the league in assists per game with, I think, 29.2 assists per game over their last 6. So this team is starting to find some things. And I think a big part of that is a lot of it is they're starting to control the pace. Yes, Cole Anthony is struggling to shoot a little bit, but he's moving the ball a lot. I know I've said on this show a number of times, I'm not really looking at Cole Anthony's scoring line as much as I'm looking at his assists. If his assists are up near 6, he's averaged, I think, 8 assists per game his last 6 games. If he's up around 6, 7, 8 assists, that means the ball is moving. It isn't sticking with him, even if he is missing his share of shots. Jalen Suggs, I think especially, has been really good about getting the ball up the floor quickly. And a guy that I want to ask your opinion about, now that we've talked a little bit about pace, guy who just really seems to play under control a lot is Franz Wagner. I don't know how much of Franz you've been able to watch, but just the way that he's able to kind of control his movements to get into the lane. I think he still needs to improve his finishing a little bit, but he's gotten a lot better with that as the season's gone on. He just always seems to play under control. Have you gotten a chance to watch any of Franz this season?
I've noticed that of late in particular, and to your point about what an improvement, and for your fans out there that may not be aware of it, we spoke just briefly earlier. They were ranked 22nd in the league in assists. Well, you just highlighted that in the last 6 games, boy, did they move in a big positive way. Franz, I like that about him. It's almost as though he's allowing the game to come to him. He's allowing things to develop almost in a more natural kind of way, and that's a good thing oftentimes to help a player mature as a basketball player. And sometimes that takes a lot longer to do than what Franz is showing us of late. I like that. I like that part. And there's a lot of these young players that could benefit from that kind of understanding of making the game a little less forced an issue, a little less stressing type style of play by not going into a move right away, by just taking a moment to read what's happening, and then that level of assessment can happen in a very quick fashion, but you've got to put yourself in that mode of maturity or that mode of thinking in order for it to be even allowed to happen. I hope that makes sense coming through the airway.
I think it does. I mean, I think a lot of us have noted about Franz that you hear this said a lot about on draft night, how their players are just, you can't speed them up. They're always under control. And I think what we've been really impressed about with Franz in his rookie year is his really high basketball IQ. Like, he always makes the right cut. He rarely makes bad decisions. Like, maybe he gets stuck a little bit on drives, but a lot of it's just kind of rookie stuff. Like, yes, he's maybe a little surprised by how fast the defense can close out on him. But by the same token, when he makes a move, when he gets into the lane, it doesn't matter what the defense is doing. It just seems like he's kind of playing at his own pace. And I would note too that Franz spent an extra year in college. He got a second year at Michigan, playing for Juwan Howard. He's a very, very good coach and an NBA guy at that. That definitely helps. But at the same time, with a player that young, it feels like it's something sort of innate about how they play. What can the Magic do? What are the Magic doing maybe to help some of these other young players kind of learn that kind of how to control their own pace a little bit, not get sucked into the vortex of just playing too fast?
Well, I think to their benefit, the core of coaches that they've hired, they sit the bulk of the majority of the staff, from an outsider's perspective, like me, with my developmental background, appears to be very strong in that area of player development. And as a result, you'd like to think that they're exchanging ideas even amongst the staff members and trying to, and what an advantage that can be, rather than being stuck in you're the key development player who's assigned this huge task of making so much work versus a lot of them having that ability that you can feel confident going up to and asking about, what do you think? I've been doing this. Is this what I should continue? Do you have any suggestions? And that kind of sharing of knowledge is probably going to show some huge payoff in the future of this group of players. It doesn't happen overnight, but this is a little bit of those last 6 games is a little bit of a glimpse of what is hopefully in store down the road. And it's not going to be an intermittent thing. It'll eventually become the way we play, the pace with which we play. You're going to see a lot less, immediately go to a move because you're comfortable doing that. You've been doing it, and that's all you know. That's not going to be the type of style they're going to be doing in maybe by the end, March, the end of March. You may see an entirely different pace, if you will, and each one of these players kind of flourishing as a result. I would like to think that's what I'm seeing in the last few games I've been watching of late. It seems to be coming together. Call it chemistry, call it a more unselfishness, stronger buy-in, whatever you want to call it. It's palpable.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's something that we've been looking for and hoping to see from this team is just hints of what they can be. And obviously they have 2 guys getting ready to come back from injury as well, from major injury as well, that they'll have to reintegrate into that group. And it could be a big impact too. We'll get into what to expect maybe from some of those guys from a developmental standpoint as they come back, as well as hit in on a few players as well with Roger. But first, I want to say a quick word from our pals at Bet Online. With Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs right to the big game in a couple weeks. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on props, pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live real-time updates of current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. Bet Online, where the game starts. We're, of course, talking a little bit about the Magic's offense, and we'll talk a little bit maybe about one way it's going to change pretty dramatically here, perhaps in the next week, because next Thursday, February 10th at 3 p.m. is the NBA trade deadline. And the Locked On NBA podcast will have you covered live from 2 to 4 p.m. Join Kim Becker, John Corrales, and Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to get analysis of every blockbuster move. Subscribe to Locked On NBA on YouTube and turn your notifications on so you know when they go live. Back here with Roger Galo, a shooting coach and offensive efficiency expert. Obviously, this is a young team. We do have that trade deadline coming up, and I think one of the concerns that I have as someone who wants to see this young team continue to grow is the potential that 2 veteran players are going to be gone. Not just 2 veteran players, but perhaps the Magic's 2 best shooters. We've talked a little bit about how the Magic are not a great 3-point shooting team. That we've Magic fans have known that forever. But what effect would losing a guy like Gary Harris or a guy like Terrence Ross, what effect could that have on this young team and its kind of burgeoning offense right now, or now that they're clicking a little bit offensively? What effect could losing one of those 2 guys, either of those 2 guys, have on this group?
Well, I think one of the most obvious things that come to my mind would be the veteran-like status that they've earned, the wisdom that they can, the of how these young players are going to go through a roller coaster like what we've witnessed prior to these last 6 games. It's not going to be. And how do you deal with that? And that's what those veterans can impart. Maintain a level-headedness, trying to help them keep things in perspective. I mean, some of this is psychological value that should not. Usually, if it's ignored, there's some kind of price to be paid for that somewhere along the line, and that's hard to. Sometimes it's tangibly noticeable, and sometimes it's not so tangibly noticeable, but it has an impact. So that has to be addressed by somebody. Maybe it can be through a trade if it's the right persona coming aboard. These are knowns. The guys you've got are knowns. The ones you bring in are not. As much as their due diligence, they're not knowns. The guys who are leaving know far more than anyone could probably truly comprehend in terms of these other young players because of where they are currently, what they've only been exposed to thus far. And that's where that veteran mentality, knowledge, wisdom can be pretty valuable. It can serve as a rock, a real strong foundation, the glue that keeps everything together under circumstances where it could easily kind of implode cases. And you don't want that to happen when you're starting to get this kind of momentum. And like you said, it can change soon. We're only a week away.
Yep. Yeah, we're only a week away, and I think the Magic have to be really fortunate and thankful to have guys like Terrence Ross and like Gary Harris. It's for better or for worse, the Magic are 12-41. They've got the worst record in the league. No one's hiding from that. It's really hard for veterans sometimes, I think, to stay engaged in a season like that. And to, yes, I think veterans generally, they want to pass down good habits to young players and they want to be good big brothers, so to speak, for these young guys. But especially, Gary Harris has been in playoff battles. Terrence Ross has been in playoff battles. Those guys want to win. And both of those guys are at points of their careers where they want to win. And I'm sure, they would welcome a trade and a potential chance to go to a contender, just like perhaps someone that the Magic are bringing in a trade, or a veteran that they're bringing in a trade. They're probably not going to be thrilled to be coming into a situation like Orlando's. I think Gary Harris viewed this the right way and wanted to be a good mentor to young guys, but also needed the chance to get healthy again and to get himself and show that he was healthy. And I think he's done that this season. And his salary might be the toughest part of a trade to move him, but he's going to be someone that I think a lot of playoff teams want on their team. Terrence Ross is going to be a guy that a lot of playoff teams want on their team. And the Magic, just because of where they are financially, because of where they are developmentally, probably behooves them to try and help those guys, those guys who've given up a lot of service and helped this team a lot, get them to winning situations and put them in advantageous points for their career, even if that maybe hurts the core group a little bit at the moment. Obviously, just their 3-point shooting is such a big deal, as well as their calm and composure. Gary Harris, especially, I think he does such a good job, I think, calming the team down at various points. And there's a reason why, like he finished Wednesday's game against the Pacers, had 24 points, I think, in that game, or 22 points in that game. Just a big reason why they were able to come back and win that game late. And I do think you lose something if you don't have those guys around. I have to apologize to Roger and to all of you. Unfortunately, as I went back to edit the rest of my conversation with Roger Galo, we were unfortunately, the audio just cut out on his end. I'm sure it was a technical glitch on my part, so I do have to apologize to Roger. We did get into a little bit more about how the veterans can continue to help the Magic improve their offense and provide some stability, which is obviously something, and we did chat a little bit about Markelle Fultz and Jonathan Isaac and how These recovery times can also be good for them to reinvent their shots as well and get themselves kind of back on track offensively, too, which we've, of course, seen with Jonathan. We've seen a little bit with Markelle as well. Of course, we'll be waiting for them to come back here in the next few days. But I do want to, since I do have to cut back in here and fill the rest of the show, I do want to talk a little bit more about some of those offensive improvements that we hinted on earlier in the conversation. The Magic's offense has obviously been a huge issue. They've been down at the bottom of the league. I think they're still 29th in the league in offensive rating. They're essentially one of the worst 3 teams in the league in almost any offensive category that you can find. That you can find anywhere. So it's been a rough year offensive. It's been a rough decade for the Magic offensive. They haven't been in a top 10 offense in the league since Dwight Howard was here. I think the best year was 2019 with Steve Clifford, and they were still in the bottom half of the league for the most part. But these last 6 games, obviously Orlando's 4-2, so they're doing good things. There has been some very clear improvement on the offensive end. For the season, the Magic are 23rd in the league in assists per game, averaging 27 assists per game. They're 11th in assist rate. So what that tells me, what that should tell you, is that yes, the Magic struggle to shoot the ball because they're not moving the ball, but B, most of their offense, most of their shots do come off of assists, at least relative to the rest of the league. A good chunk of their passing, a good chunk of their shots come directly from their passing. As Jamal Mosley would like to say earlier in the season about kind of what his offensive philosophy is, the Magic are trying to play with the pass. It's a long, tired coachism, but very, very truly that is what the Magic are trying to do. We noted it, I think, a month or so ago about the Magic's passing, kind of checking in on how the Magic were trying to play with the pass. For the season, so the Magic overall this year are 14th in the league with 282.6 passes per game. Now, that doesn't tell you a lot because you could overpass the ball. You can pass the ball without purpose. That doesn't tell you much. But the Magic are also 16th in the league in potential assists at 45.8 potential assists per game, according to data from Second Spectrum. So that should tell you that a lot of the Magic's offense is coming off of passing, off of being set up by others, off of playmaking. There, again, it's really vital. It's not obviously where it wants to be. The passing could be a little bit more purposeful, could be a little bit more effective, but it's certainly a positive sign. In those last 6 games, the Magic's offense has gone from 112.2 points per, or the offense has gone from a really poor number, around 108 points per 100 possessions, I believe, to 112.2 points per 100 possessions in the last 6 games. That is 11th in the league. So again, the Magic are starting to pick up their offense a little bit. They're averaging 29.3 assists per game, which is second in the league over everyone's last 6 games, and a 69.8% assist rate, which is also second in the league. A point that I really made, and something to keep an eye on in these games, a point that I made with in my conversation with Roger, is a really underrated part of a good taking shots is a good pass. Do you catch the ball cleanly? Does it come right into the pocket? Are you able to go straight into your shooting motion or into a triple threat motion? Just kind of real basic stuff. And as I told him, there's really no way to measure any of this. There's no way to say this is happening, this way, or this is what it is. It's something you have to observe and something you have to watch. It's something that I noticed when the Magic's offense gets stuck, it's because they have to stop and reset, whether it's a bad pass, whether it's unable to getting around the screen. Like one of the big problems the Magic have is dealing with switches because, Cole Anthony coming around to Wendell Carter's screen, there's a switch. He has to kind of reset himself to attack the big that's now switched onto him. That creates an isolation. That's not what the Magic are good at. They don't have guys to operate in isolation and really attack the basket. So that's not who this team is. This team needs to thrive on its passing. And that's what's happening now. This Magic team is also very, very balanced. And so you see a lot of the Magic's offensive successes come when the ball is shared, when everybody eats, as Bradley Beal would like to say. Last few games, Magic have had numerous players score at least 10 points. Even though Cole Anthony is struggling, like I've been saying in my box score reviews, at this point, I'm no longer watching for Cole Anthony to hit a certain point total or hit a field goal percentage total. I'm looking for him to hit an assist total. Can he get enough assists? Can he build the passing and the assists that he needs to be successful and for him to help this offense move. There's obviously a lot of work the Magic need to do. The prospect of potentially losing Gary Harris and Terrence Ross could potentially take away some quality shooters from this team and take away some much needed offense from this team. And I think that's going to be a major adjustment, not just from the fact that you're losing veteran guys who know what they're doing, but you're losing some key player. You're losing just key people and key floor spacers as well. And certainly Marco Fultz and Jonathan Isaac are not known shooters. Those are guys that have had to really work on their shooting form and improve as shooters once they've come to the NBA. And it's obviously been very, very, very difficult. We'll close the show a little bit, talk about this weekend's games against the Memphis Grizzlies and Boston Celtics coming up here in just a moment. But first, a quick word from our pal Built Bar. Look, January's already over. Those New Year's resolutions might be done already, but don't give up on them. Please don't give up on your New Year's resolutions. It's still February. There's still 10 months to go to get done what you need to get done. Don't let a momentary setback get you where you need to be. Get back on track. Eat the right way. This is something I need to do because I love my sweets too. Get on your Built Bars. Eat your Built Bars. It's the easiest way to stick to your resolution because it tastes so good and you'll want to eat it and it won't kill you in the calorie count. We all need chocolate in our lives. No shame in that. Chocolate's delicious. So make sure that chocolate is productive. Built Bars are covered in 100% real chocolate. They taste great. And most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. There's so many great flavors to choose from too, like coconut, almond, peanut butter brownie, raspberry, cookies and cream, salted caramel, mint brownie, and many more. In fact, Built is always coming out with new limited time flavors, so check out Built.com often to see what's new. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. The Orlando Magic with the rare home back-to-back this weekend before they hit their West Coast trip, their final big road trip of the season coming up starting on Tuesday. They'll travel to Portland on Monday. They'll take on the Memphis Grizzlies and the Boston Celtics on Saturday and Sunday. So just tomorrow. Very, very excited to see a Magic practice for a change. But probably the last practice before the All-Star break at this point too as well. So, last practice with perhaps Terrence Ross and Gary Harris, but also last practice before the All-Star break. So hopefully we'll see we'll probably see some changes the next time the Magic all gather together. Obviously Memphis is one of the best teams in the league right now. They're playing exceptionally well. John Morant is a dynamo, and it's going to be a real big test for the Magic's defense. I've put those defensive numbers out there. I believe the Magic have been playing some much better defense. Obviously not the last 2 games, but they have not faced necessarily a guard as dynamic as John Morant is. Obviously they had Russell Westbrook, but he's not John Morant anymore. It's going to be a real big challenge and a stress test on the Magic's bigs to play, kind of the frenetic style that Morant plays. And obviously Memphis is a very, very good team. One of the better teams, and it's going to be a real challenge for the Orlando Magic to hang tough with this team. It's going to be a really interesting little mini homestand here, these 2 games coming up this weekend. Obviously, the Boston Celtics are a team the Magic have struggled with in the past, dealing with their own injuries and their own inconsistency issues. The last time they played, of course, Jason Tatum did not play. Jaylen Brown still dropped 50 on them, came back from a 14-point deficit late in the fourth quarter. So if the Magic have any pride and any energy left, that would be a game to really kind of focus in on and get the job done. Tip-off on Saturday is at 5 p.m. Tip-off on Sunday is at 6 p.m. as the Magic continue to get closer and closer to the All-Star break. And, of course, that big West Coast trip starts next week. That's going to do it for me today, though. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Again, I apologize for the technical issues and you didn't get to hear the back half of my conversation with Roger Galo. I truly apologize for that. You can find Roger on Twitter. Let me pull up his Twitter account so people know where to find him if they're interested in learning more about the Galo method. It's at Galo Method, GALOMETHOD on Twitter. He's a shooting coach and offensive efficiency expert. He has a shot program that's different from what a lot of people teach. He's very, very, very into kind of learning how to optimize shooting technique And he's been a shot coach and a former player at the highest levels as well. So definitely was very happy to have him on. Apologize that you didn't get to hear the last half of the conversation that we had. Hope you still got a good picture of what he can bring, and hopefully we can have him back on the show very, very soon. You, of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipR_MD. And for the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. I want to thank you again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. For Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. See you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.